Peterson, do you have any comments on the Nazi presence at your protest?
Yeah, I don't like Nazis.
Oh, come on, Jordan. Surely we can find something you can like about yourself.
Meet Jordan Peterson. 2 years ago, he was an unknown psychology professor at the University of Toronto. But today, he's been called the most influential public intellectual in the Western world.
Whereupon we will now examine the top 10 Jordan Peterson. Herein is the top 10 Jordan Peterson fails.
They just think that. How many vegans do you know? You know, they're clueless religious, because what they have is ritual without philosophy, fundamentally. So what's happened in many cases is that as the sophisticated religions, so to speak, have collapsed, what emerges from their ashes are rituals.
And we're here at the largest bingo facility.
I love it.
And rituals are sort of the ground out of which a religion emerges. Vegans, vegetarians, environmentalists, anybody who's an ideologue.
His sentences are so funny. Hilarious. He can tell his fan base that apples are actually oranges unless they are grapefruit, and they'll accept it. These sentences have this structure. A collapses, B emerges, and B is the ground which A emerges. Let's pretend for a moment that makes any sense at all. Lentil soup, A, gets cold, collapses. All goes bad. And what arises are stomach aches. B emerges, and out of stomach aches, we get lentil soup. Or perhaps closer to the original statement. Paper, A, burns, collapses. You get ashes, B emerges from, and B the ground in which A emerges. So from the ashes, we get paper. Yes. Huh? Unbelievable. But since Jesus Peterson said it, it must be true. Still, we just gotta have faith. But veganism, true and proper, demand that no one take anything on any faith. If we stretch the definition of vegan to also include the vegans who are dance or fitness advocates, then we see the nefarious ritual element at work. Fitness and dance have by appearance at least a semi-resemblance to ritualism, as found in various religions around the world. Wave arms, kneel here, walk there, circumambulate, put your left foot in, put your left foot out, pirouette, pump iron, get dunked in holy water, tummy crunches, pray 5 times a day, face Mecca, eat 2 cookies, low carb, high carb. It never ends. But not all vegans are fitness buffs, and not all fitness buffs are vegan. So there you go. So why does Dr. Petticoat say things like this that are obviously, verifiably untrue? Well, Peter Dick's PhD makes everything he says all is true, doesn't it? Which leads us to number 9 on this list of the top 10 Jordan Peterson fails, which is the universality of religiosity. Now, which of these acts are not religious in nature? Chopping wood, ordering fast food, watching TV, haggling, karaoke singing, bar hopping, fighting with your significant other. Well, according to Peterson, they all are, in fact, religious acts if we apply his definition of religion.
Religious is what you act out.
What's that?
Religious is what you act out.
Anything you act out.
But as Stephen Woodford pointed out,
the reason he can say that everyone is religious is because he's created a new definition of religion that's somehow more vague than the already useless, a pursuit or interest followed with great devotions. And it's precisely why I and many others have accused him of language games. And the worst part about it is that he's not at all upfront about the obscure and sometimes entirely made up definitions that he uses until someone essentially forces him to be so.
Jock Boy Peterless then is using sophistry in order to obfuscate, thereby allowing him to be many different things to many different people without actually being any of those things.
Is that he's not at all upfront about the obscure and sometimes entirely made up definitions that he uses until someone essentially forces him to be so. Until that point, most of his Christian followers simply assume that he's using their language, and that he therefore shares their beliefs, while most of his irreligious followers feel confused and often convince themselves that he's just being poetic.
Huh?
Rather than using the colloquial definition of truth, that being that which is in accordance with reality, he's created a new definition of truth, that being that which promotes reproduction. The reason he can say that the Bible is more real than real...
A great novel is more real than real.
Harlequin novels? Written porn? 50 Shades of Grey. No, Harry Potter. Harry Potter is the most meta of them all, because, as you know, Harry is like way hotter than Jesus.
And a collection of stories like the Bible.
Or the 50 Shades of Grey trilogy. Hubba hubba. Whapow! Whapow!
That's more real than meta-real.
You know what's more real than meta-real? Meta-real. Doesn't matter if meta-real, or it's not really real at all anymore. Once we have 3 to 4 times removed from real itself, let's get back to real. Does real even exist? If I kick you in the butt, is that real or is that meta-real?
Dumbass.
Our culture is predicated on the idea of God, and that you can't just take that idea away and expect the thing to remain intact mid-air without any foundational support.
Central to the dogma promulgated by right-wing fundamentalists, whether a predominantly Christian bent like Peterson and YouTube Christian pastors, is the misleading notion that all of Western culture's ethics is founded on either Judaism.
The values that resonate most with human beings are eternal. And those values were first embedded clearly and concisely in the Ten Commandments.
And all Christianity.
Judeo-Christian values are predicated on the existence of a God of morality. The entire Western world, what we call Western civilization, is based on this understanding.
Which is patently not true.
Evidence shows that official laws against murder and theft date back at least 4,400 years to Lagash, Mesopotamia. The principle of free speech and expression dates back 2,500 years to ancient Athens and the Roman Republic. The Old and New Testament both explicitly endorse slavery. The truth of the matter is that the principle of liberty dates back, again, 2,500 years to Athens.
But this is a necessary foundation for Peter Block and his kind to justify the allowance of all kinds of horrors, including speciesism, which is the unkind disregard of anyone not of the human race, and can be classified in an overarching form, if you want to classify such things, as a form of racism, which leads us to see that the dude don't give a flying fuck for animal rights.
Animals don't have rights.
The dude don't give a flying fuck for animal rights. A right is defined as being in accord with what is just or good, something to which one has a just claim, and that which is in the cause of truth and justice. Any being, human and animal, has the right to a life free from suffering. Unjust imprisonment, slavery, torture, execution, has the right to freedom and mobility, has the right to love and to be loved. Such rights are founded on the existence of individual consciousness and sentience. Every conscious being, human and non-human, need have these basic rights. In 2012, the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness established just that, although new scientists ask, why is it so overdue? Nonetheless, there we have it. New scientists also ask, will this declaration make a difference? Not to Dr. Johnny B. Pestilence, it didn't.
Animals don't have rights.
The fact that wolves, elephants, chimpanzees, rats, bats and whales have all been proven to exhibit moral behaviour.
Rights are, by definition, reciprocal.
Stephen W. Wise, a legal scholar, argues that immunity rights, as bodily integrity and freedom from slavery, can belong to human children, infants, the very retarded, the profoundly senile and insane, as it is the weakest humans and animals who are in most need of legal protection from exploitation. He argues that a minimum level of autonomy, the abilities to desire, to act intentionally, and to have some sense of self, whatever the species, is sufficient to justify the basic legal right to bodily integrity.
People have responsibilities to animals as well, Terminology matters.
Terminology matters to the man who plays fast and loose with the meanings of words to suit his hidden agenda, it seems. Which brings us to...
It started when Canada proposed a new transgender rights law.
So what happened was in the fall of 2016 is that Peterson inserted himself into a national Canadian debate over transgender rights, specifically by refusing to refer to a student by their chosen gender pronoun. Ah, yes, the day that changed Jordan Pettiford's life forever. That fateful day where he made a very big public blunder that launched him 1 million Patreon followers. Well, not literally 1 million Patreon followers, but $1 million. He protested a bill that had nothing to do with him or his rights, as it did not even extend to employees of educational facilities. Imagine that. Guilty! Is he guilty of committing the strawman fallacy? Yes, he is, of course. But why? Ka-ching! Why? Ka-ching! Can you guess why? Ka-ching!
Peterson said it was about free speech. Peterson started posting YouTube videos railing against political correctness.
It's absolutely pathetic.
Basically, you're not allowed to discriminate against people because they're black. That was already on the books. You're not allowed to discriminate against people because they're disabled. That was already on the books. You're not allowed to discriminate against people because of their sex or because they're gay. That was already on the books. So all they did was add gender identity and gender expression to this. You can't discriminate against somebody simply because they're transgender. Well, Jordan Peterson began making a series of videos where he began misrepresenting Bill C-16.
And conservatives ate that shit up.
I am not going to be a mouthpiece for language that I detest. And that's that!
And you didn't even have to. Not at all. And you must have known that. You're no dummy. You make a series of false accusations, they make you wealthy and famous, just as you intended. Now isn't that the real truth here?
Jordan Peterson!
Please consider making a tax-deductible donation.
Ka-ching! I tend to agree with this guy, Joseph Aarons, who's a doctoral student at Florida International University, who answered this question, what is your review of Prager University, at the well-known question and answer website Quora. And when he said, Prager University, so-called, is little more than a corporate ad campaign for conservative anti-intellectualism. Dennis Prager is a rich buttocked right-wing talk show host who started a YouTube series of videos which takes place in a fake college campus he calls Prager U. Well, Prager to you too, Prager. Jordan Bertha Peterdaughter, who no one has to respect because he says he won't respect anyone if they had not managed to earn his respect. And who we can name whatever we damn well please, because otherwise, damn it, our freedom of speech will be compromised, and we will not allow our freedom of speech to become compromised. Like so many Petersonian public lectures. Just a bit of levity there. The Petersonian public lectures are totally compromised, if you know what I mean. Let's not allow that to happen to our divine freedom of speech. Take that, Peter Cunt! Despite protestations to the contrary, Georgina Peterson nested himself deep into the bosom of the American right-wing tribe, so guilty of the very identity politics he accuses others of. Why he himself is merely manifesting the prejudiced outrage of being white, North American conservative, upper middle class, Judeo-Christian, sort of.
That Jesus rose again from the dead. Literally.
And heteronormative, and not being universally worshipped for being those things. These traits identify Prager also, as they do all right-wing conservative tribesmen. Identity politics? Yes. I watched Dave Rubin imply that businesses should be allowed to ban homosexuals. Christina Hoff Sommers suggested gender inequality is negligible in the workplace. And Mike Rowe advised young people to give up on their dreams. Based on those observations, I can only conclude one thing. If you speak for Prager, you're a corporate shill.
Hate groups like the alt-right became some of his biggest fans.
So Peterson lodges his little self into the Prager to promulgate his toxic memes. Probably the most toxic of them so far include:
Do you think that hate speech should be free speech as well?
Yes.
So after getting it wrong about Canadian law relative to trans rights, JP went on to make himself the world's angriest, grabbiest Big Daddy by telling everyone to clean your room. Along the way, he demonizes feminists, Marxists, vegans, liberal arts education.
You may not realize it, but you are currently funding some dangerous people. They are indoctrinating young minds throughout the West with their resentment-ridden ideology. They have made it their life's mission to undermine Western civilization itself.
Cosmetics, hot young girls, anyone who dared to critically review his public work, boiled cabbage, Jackie Chan movies, and jazz rock fusion music. Just kidding on the last three. And the fucking feminists, they just don't get it. Men run the world cause men are just better at it. Why? If we let women run things, we'd end up with catastrophic global warming and a collective history of violence and injustice and weapons that could destroy the planet and... Wait. Well, we already got all those. But we cannot allow men and women to work in the same office, or working women to wear makeup. That is just an out-and-out invitation to get raped. I tell ya, raped! And don't get him started on those transgender deviants. There are only two genders, I tell ya, or he tells ya, two. And to hear him tell the truth about humans, quote, "You have an evil heart. You have an evil heart, like the person next to you. You have an evil heart, like the person next to you." How does he speak? Like that Ray Romano on Helium voice. "You have an evil heart, like the person next to you." Yes, you do. Don't act as if you don't, you evil, evil piece of... Which makes it all seem like the esteemed Professor Dr. Savior of Humanity, Peter Snatcher, is a bit of a whiner, wouldn't you say? The doctor, steeped in Jungian psychology, has not been able to identify within the nicotine black smoke of his own heart the very deceits and deviancies he so likes to accuse others of. Fascism, injustice, irrationalism, bullying. You would think all these traits could be considered good by people who measure success in monetary and social reward terms alone, but everything listed here so far do indeed spell out a failure more real than failure itself. To misquote on purpose our esteemed Herr Doctor. The moral failures of one Dr. Jordan B. Peterson is only eclipsed by his staggering lack of genuine intelligence and insight, despite what his millions of blind and deaf and dumb followers may erroneously believe him to be. Why, even a drunk Australian ne'er-do-well could effortlessly outsmart him on national television. Which brings us to our number one. Caught between a logical inconsistency or an illogical consistency, JP, in a rare state of humility, gets into comedian Jim Jeffries.
Making people bake a cake for a gay wedding.
Making them do it?
Yeah.
I don't think that's a very good idea.
But here's the argument, so should they be able to deny making a cake for a black couple if they don't like black people?
Allowed to? Probably. That doesn't mean it's right.
Okay, so then we had the civil rights movement.
Yep.
Where they said black people, you had to serve them in your restaurants and stuff like that, and it did work, and it did make our society better, but would you argue that that still wasn't right?
No, that was right.
Why is that different to now if you didn't want to make a cake for black people?
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not different.
Yeah, Bert!
Now, if J. Peterson were to exhibit more, much more of this much-needed humility, the ability to think clearly and in a rational, detached manner, perhaps he wouldn't be the toxic lecturer that he is. We come to an end of yet another I Advance Maths video presentation. I hope you liked it. Agree, disagree, comment, thumbs up. Do what you will.